In this video, we will discuss various features of coordinates, axes, and reference frames, and also point out how these are different concepts, and we will wrap up by briefly going over the concept of absolute time in context of Galilean relativity. So what are coordinates? Coordinates are a set of rules. These rules tell us the steps we need to follow operationally so that we can come up with a unique set of three numbers for each point in space. I'm assuming the space is three-dimensional here. For higher dimensional spaces, you can go to numbers beyond 3, of course. So each point in space having such a unique set of numbers assigned to itself is the crucial requirement here. Apart from the good old Cartesian coordinates xyz of our school days, if you also remember the spherical or cylindrical polar coordinates, we immediately realize that coordinates need not have the dimensions of length. Also, unlike what we naively thought while applying the Pythagoras theorem in school, the truth is that the coordinate values at 2 points P and Q in a given coordinate system alone cannot determine the distance between these 2 points. We need the metric of that coordinate system also. So the metric was a trivial unit matrix in Cartesian system, but nevertheless they are there. Note the way the metric Gij of the coordinate system couples with the coordinate differentials dxi and dxj to construct the length squared formula. Here, the index I in dxi takes the value 1, 2 and 3 for the three spatial coordinates x, y and z respectively. The same goes for the index j as well. If an index is repeated in an expression, that implies you have to take a sum over all values of that index. This, I hope you know, goes by the name of Einstein's summation convention. Cartesian coordinate systems has the trivial metric as you can see in the slide. If you expand the summation, you get the standard Pythagorean expression for distance measurement. Notice that because of the diagonal nature of the metric, you only get coordinate differentials squared in the expression. In the same spirit, we can write the length squared in terms of spherical polar coordinates as well, where we have another diagonal but a more non-trivial metric. Here also we get coordinate differential squared in the expression, so note that. Since we have described the Cartesian and spherical polar coordinate systems, let us see how the two sets of coordinates relate to each other. Such relations are called coordinate transformation relations. These relations can be highly nonlinear, as we can see for Cartesian and spherical polar coordinates. Note that since the trigonometric functions like sine or cos are series expansions, so the relations are nonlinear. Same is true for the inverted relations as well. So we can have coordinate systems that are time dependent also. For example, a point O prime circulating the fixed origin O of the Cartesian coordinate system with radius say a0 and angular speed omega will have a time varying position vector r function of t. If we set up another Cartesian system with O prime as the origin and with axis parallel to the previous one, any fixed point P in space that has a fixed position vector x with respect to O will have a time varying position vector x prime with respect to O prime. And there is nothing wrong in using this x prime coordinate system since it can assign unique coordinate values to the point P as well. Although these values will keep changing with time, but at each time instant all points in the space will have a unique set of coordinate values. And if you think this sort of time varying coordinate system is unnecessarily complicating matters, perhaps you should remember that our Earth circulating the Sun is more or less this kind of a system. Examples of some relevant time varying coordinate systems are a uniformly moving car, an accelerating car, etc. Notice that in the first example, the coordinate change is linear in time, and in the second one, it is nonlinear in time. We'll come back to this point later. An important point to remember is that only such coordinate definitions are allowed that have one-to-one coordinate transformation relations. Otherwise, we lose the unique nature of coordinates as you can see in the inverted relation here. Thus, x prime equals x cube or x prime equals x to the power 5 can do fine. However, the Pythagoras theorem will look a bit odd in the primed coordinates. Without going into the mathematical details of how the axes of a coordinate system are defined, let us just operationally define them as the set of lines along which one of the coordinates changes and others are held fixed. The orientation or direction of a given coordinate axis may change as we move to different locations in space. It is only in case of Cartesian coordinate system that all three coordinate axes keep their respective directions fixed and therefore are always along a single straight line each. However, for spherical polar coordinate system, the angular coordinates theta and phi change their values along the curve as can be seen in the figure. The corresponding axes are defined as local tangents to these curves denoted by hat theta and hat phi in the figure. Even the radial coordinate is defined as the radial distance from the origin, and thus its axis also changes direction from one location to the other. The same can also be said about the cylindrical polar coordinates as well, though its z-axis maintains a fixed direction everywhere like the one of the Cartesian coordinate systems. In general, at any point in space we can check which way the coordinate curves are going and draw local tangents to these curves. Together, these tangents from the axis system at that point. By the way, notice that one has the liberty to draw the axis system at any point in space, not necessarily at the origin where all the coordinates have zero value. To convince yourself of this, you have only to look at the r hat, theta hat, phi hat trio at the point P in the figure where the coordinates take non-zero values for r, theta and phi. Rotating the axis system amounts to rotating the coordinate layouts, thus such rotations will change only the components of a vector and not the vector itself, since physically we have not done anything to that vector. Note that when we say rotating the axis, we only mean changing the orientation of the axis system, usually by a given angle. We do not mean a rotating coordinate system, which is a different thing altogether. Lastly, shifting the axis system or even the origin do not change a vector unless it is the position vector itself or some other vector defined using the position vector, for example, the angular momentum or the torque, etc. Now that we have understood the coordinates and axis system, let us talk about reference frame and the observer attached to it. Movement can only be seen with respect to other bodies. If you have ever sat in a flight, you should be able to appreciate this. High up in the air, you usually do not have a rapidly changing landscape, and therefore, although you know that you are hurtling through space, you do not really feel the motion in your gut as you normally do in a bus ride. Thus, let us agree on the fact that to track motion of a body, we need other bodies for reference. We choose this reference body as per our convenience and call it a reference frame. Further, we do not just want to track but also would like to quantify this motion and do all sorts of calculation based on them. Therefore comes the coordinate system and axis attached to that reference frame. An observer doing this tracking, quantifying and calculating is essentially at rest with respect to his or her reference frame. Note that the observer do not need to be at origin. In fact, when we do topics like special relativity, it is usually less confusing if we imagine infinite number of observers, one at each point all along the spatial axis. But more on that will be covered in a later video. Finally, and most importantly, two or more reference frames are distinguished only by their relative motion. That is, any object that is at rest with respect to our reference frame can also serve as a reference frame and must be thought of as identical to our original reference frame. On the other hand, if a body is moving uniformly or non-uniformly with respect to our reference frame, then it is a different reference frame. Thus, two observers that have relative velocities with respect to each other are distinct observers attached to distinct reference frames. Note that reorienting the axis directions, that is rotating the coordinate system or shifting the origin of the coordinate system, do not give rise to a different reference frame. This is because rotating the axis or shifting origins only change the way we quantify the motion. Physically, these actions do not bring any change to the situation. Thus, all the vector quantities related to motion, for example velocity, momentum, acceleration, etc., do not change. Because changing the coordinate layout do not affect the target body at all. Therefore, motion of the target body will appear the same to an observer S1 even if he or she chooses to rotate or shift his or her coordinate system. But of course, the components of these vectors do change, as assigning component values to a vector totally depends on axis orientation and coordinate layout, as you can see if you have followed the construction of the figure in the slide. In contrast, physical values of all these quantities will change when measured by another observer S2 moving with a velocity v21 with respect to the S1 reference frame. The motion thus appears a lot different to S2. For example, a point P fixed in space having a position vector say x1 with respect to observer S1 will look like a moving point in space with velocity minus v21 with respect to observer S2, and S2 will assign a time varying coordinate x prime function of t to it. The equation relating the two sets of coordinates x and x prime is easy to obtain by referring to the vector diagram shown in the slide. Notice that the term v21 is the term v21 multiplied by t is nothing but the vector connecting the origin of S1 to that of S2 frame. Further, we can write it as v21 into t only if v21 is a uniform velocity. Otherwise, we have to write it as a general time varying position vector, for example say q21 function of t. This transformation equation brings in a lot to the platter, so let us look into it in details. To keep things more general, let us first assume that the point P is moving with respect to S1 and thus its coordinate x varies with time t. This changes the equation slightly. We can take a derivative with respect to time t to see how the velocity of the point P looks with respect to observer S1 and S2 and how the two velocities are related. This gives us what is known as the velocity addition theorem of Galilean relativity. Further, let's make the velocity of S2 with respect to observer S1, that is v21, time varying as well, and take one more derivative with respect to time t. Remembering Newton's second law and assuming it holds in S1, we see that the familiar form it had in observer S1's frame doesn't hold in observer S2's frame. Rather, it picks up a contribution due to the S2's acceleration with respect to S1. This brings us to the distinction between different reference frames, one where Newton's law works in its standard form and the other where it picks up additional terms like ddt of v21 owing to the acceleration of the reference frame itself. First one, that is S1, is called inertial frame or inertial observer where Newton's law of inertia works, and the other one, that is S2, is called non-inertial frame where it doesn't work. Notice that the observer S2 only measures d2 x prime dt2 as acceleration of the point P, and thus from his or her perspective the applied force F does not match up with the observed acceleration. Thus he or she concludes that Newton's law does not work in his or her frame. Now, if you remember one of the earlier slides where we talked about the time-dependent coordinate transformations from x coordinate system to x prime coordinate system, you would note that the transformation linear in time gives rise to a new inertial coordinate system x prime if the older coordinate system x is inertial to begin with, whereas the one nonlinear in time creates a non-inertial coordinate system x prime, even though the older coordinate system x is inertial. In this second example, the f0 is acceleration of the observer S2 with respect to S1. It is curious to see that a coordinate transformation heavily nonlinear in spatial coordinates, for example going to polar coordinates r theta from the Cartesian xy, does not affect the Newton's second law at all. The observed acceleration vector times the mass nicely matches with the applied force vector. Granted that if you break down the vector force equation into radial and polar components, these components will look a bit different, but the overall vector equation is unaltered. Thus, observer S1 retains its inertial status even if he or she chooses to use a polar coordinate system instead of a Cartesian one. Not only that, also note that this Cartesian to polar coordinate transformation does not take the observer to a different inertial reference frame. He or she still is in the same inertial reference frame S1. It's just that the coordinate points are being laid in a different manner now. In contrast, when the coordinate transformation is time dependent, the reference frame changes from S1 to S2. If the transformation is linear in time, the transformed coordinates belong to a new inertial reference frame, but the moment we have a coordinate transformation nonlinear in time, it completely messes up the Newton's second law for the observer in the transformed frame and we get a non-inertial reference frame. All this is because of the fact that a time-dependent coordinate transformation brings in relative motion between the two sets of coordinates, thus essentially changing the reference frame. Now that we have seen that time played a serious role in context of reference frames and coordinate transformations, let us delve further into the time business. If you have been paying attention, you must have spotted that we used the same time variable t for both the observers S1 and S2 when we took time derivatives in the last slide. We did not bring in a prime time variable t prime for S2 as we did for its special coordinates x prime. So hidden assumption is that the time flows at the same rate for both the observers S1 and S2. More specifically, the clocks used by S1 and S2 show the same time readings and they will keep showing the same time readings. So the clocks used by different observers in different reference frames are all synchronized, and this is regardless of what their relative motion is. So we have t equals t prime if you want to call the time reading of S2 as t prime. This is known as the assumption of absolute time in Galilean relativity, and it came directly from our experience and therefore was a totally obvious thing to assume. For a future technicality, let us point out here that according to this assumption, all the observers in all reference frames, inertial or non-inertial regardless, will agree on the simultaneity of events and the sequence of events, at least in Galilean relativity. Things will differ drastically once we get into the territory of Einstein's special relativity, but that is a topic of another video. Before we finish, let's just sum up the slides. Coordinate variables need not have dimension of length but need to assign unique set of numbers to each point. Length measurement requires the metric of the coordinate system along with the coordinate readings. An axis is in general a local tangent to a coordinate curve pointing to a direction along which only that coordinate value increases. Axis system can be constructed anywhere, not just at the origin. Rotating the coordinate layout only affects the components of a vector, not the vector itself. And of course, shifting origin of a coordinate system also does not affect the vector unless it involves position vector. Transformation relations connecting two coordinate systems can involve spatial coordinates as well as time coordinates. A time-dependent coordinate transformation takes you to a different reference frame. This sort of frame change doesn't happen if the transformation involves only spatial coordinates, regardless of it being linear or nonlinear in nature. Starting from an inertial frame, a linear time dependence will take you to another inertial frame. But for nonlinear time dependence, you are landed in a non-inertial reference frame even if you start from an inertial one. And finally, time has an absolute status in Galilean relativity. Clocks of all observers agree on the simultaneity and sequence of events. So that's all I had for you in this video, and I hope to catch you in the next one. Thanks for listening. Bye bye.